And welcome back to Janky AF and Year of the Aerostar, episode 15. Well, we're getting close. We're in San Jose, California today on our Southern California-ish residency. And we have an absolutely stunning, beautiful 1993 Ford Aerostar extended minivan for just $2,000, listed, as I said, in San Jose, California. We have 163,000 miles on this vehicle, so not too bad. Still, 37 to go till you hit 200. Automatic transmission, exterior color silver, but it's actually blue on silver, as we see a wonderful two-tone Aerostar. I absolutely love the two-tone Aerostars. Interior black. Two-owner vehicle, and it says 1993 Ford Aerostar camper / cargo, has no back seats, no issues. I like that. No back seats, no issues. I knew a fellow once that wanted a single cab truck instead of a quad cab or something like that, because he said there was, less room for a-holes in there. It's my daily, the seller says, reliable vehicle, open to offers. So very straightforward, keep it simple post. I think that's a very fair price, at least to begin negotiations. Maybe you try to talk them down a few $100s if you're feeling like trying to make a deal for yourself, or if you can't contain yourself and you just want it so bad, you can offer full sticker and try to swoop in there and get it. A lot to say about this one aesthetically. Now, of course, 1993 is probably one of my favorite years, definitely one of my favorite years of the Aerostar. I love this picture, seeing it in profile with a little sitting in the shade there across the street. Lovely sort of California architecture behind it. First thing I'll notice is it looks like the front bumper is a little perhaps dinged up, kind of hard to see there, but that's something to note. But boy, the silver and blue is sort of a quintessential Aerostar combination. I believe, back to 86, a lot of them had this like either dark blue on light blue two-tone or a silver on blue two-tone. So it harkens back to some of the first Aerostars. Apparently it was still going in 93. And you will see your bumpers are sort of don't match this blue, which was a funny decision by Ford. I think they probably just didn't want to paint them. But it kind of, looks all right. It's got the, black cargo style bumpers that you see a lot of mock-ups. I've mentioned this before, but you see like hyper expensive cars, Porsche 911s, Lamborghinis mocked up as like the cargo version. So it's kind of becoming a trope, and I think because of that, it's kind of becoming something that's seen as actually desirable or aesthetically favorable, as opposed to body colored bumpers, which I think both look great. If you want to keep it stock, you can run with that. But it is funny how the color does change, even though the design would have you, follow this entire line back straight through the wheel well. The extended ones are great. I've never owned an extended minivan, extended Aerostar. I would like to one day. They certainly have just a presence to them with all those angular lines going all the way back there. And the two-tone paint even heightens that further, because you have the, your hood here with the silver, and it dips around very beautifully around your window line, and then just this long path back all the way to your beautifully arching rear window here that comes down through your beautiful taillights. And so that silver right in the middle of that blue is sort of like a forward moving arrow, and it looks like it's in motion even when it's still. One of the great things about the Aerostar. It looks like you have a factory roof rack up there, maybe a slight tint on those windows. They look very nice. Looks like you're riding your factory wheels. Now, I do love these steel wheels, but they made these little silver hubcaps that popped over the lug nuts and such, and it's just a really good look. It's a classic truck look, really. And I think it looks great. I would like to see those hubcaps on there, but you can pick them up easily enough. Does look like it also has a running board added to it, which is lovely. Now, I think these may have been, you may have been able to order these from the factory. I'm not sure, but certainly you do see them quite frequently on Aerostars, and these are not the same as the sort of more gussied up running boards on the sport versions, which are almost like a body kit that was put on. A very, very cool look. But I like these as well. They're purposeful, just a nice steel or aluminum running board there. Helps you get in, and it adds some, while it doesn't help your ground clearance, it adds some like sleekness to the whole package, and it sort of makes it look very, very nice there, and also very functional, of course. So let's go around the vehicle, shall we, and take a couple more looks at it. Interior, you know, you got the dark blue. I like the dark blue a lot with your black plastic, obviously, pieces. The interior looks, you know, it's a little worse for wear. You got some speaker missing and some other things going on, but not too bad, honestly. No cracks in the dashboard or anything for a 163,000 mile, you know, 20 plus old year vehicle. I love the interior of the Aerostar. It's got these great little nets here that kind of, you know, usually the elastic's pretty blown on them, but you know, they're just cute little functional things. I love these sort of nets, so they hold stuff in place, but it's a good solution instead of having like a flip out shelf or something like that. Just very practical, very matter of fact. And I don't know if you see like netting like that so much in many vehicles. It's kind of a novel thing. You know, your beautiful little speaker here. I think the dark blue interior works wonderful with this light blue on silver exterior. So as you can see, just a ton of space, and this is like obviously a camper cargo thing. So the rear seats, it's not too hard to find rear seats for an Aerostar. Two sets of them. The bench seats, if you're lucky, you can find captain's chairs, and that's really, you know, the cat's meow. But just endless space in here. As I've said before, you can fit a full 4x8 sheet of plywood in here. It's just a cavernous, tremendous interior. You have your liftgate. Maybe I've mentioned this actually in my last video with barn doors versus liftgate. It looks like the struts maybe struggling here a little bit. That's fairly common. I love just seeing the blue on the silver. And you see this almost dark blue purplish bumper. Now this was a common thing. It's not gray really. It's like this dark blue, almost purplish color. And it's very interesting. I'm not sure what exactly was behind that, but I'm fairly certain that's stock and that's how they came. And it was just an interesting sort of 80s, 90s thing by Ford. The blanket in there is very nice as we come back to the profile shot. And just, man, like, you know, it screams like 80s and 90s for sure. But it's quite timeless. I think two-tone is hard to pull off in cars. Certain cars wear it better than others, and I think the Aerostar was just tailor-made for it. It was almost like they designed the vehicle to, you know, have two-tone color schemes, and that's something that's kind of gone away. You really, really don't see it too much. I guess you see now the rubber cladding on cars sort of a different color, but I wouldn't say that's like really a two-tone, you know, and even the fact that it's, you know, you have your different color on the bottom as well as the top, this sort of like sandwich motif that's going on here. And it just works so perfectly, right above your taillights, right below your sort of rear window arch there. And you know, this profile shot of the Aerostar, again, well, we've talked about it before, but there's so many contrasting angles here that just work in perfect harmony with each other. This line right here, like it would have been so easy for them to just make this window line right here flat, you know, just match it up with this, the same as your, you know, mirroring your driver's side door right there. But instead they put this cute little angle in it, and it just adds so much to the design. And then that line is followed all the way down. So you have it here on the sliding window, you have it here again where the back fixed window comes, and then you have it here again with your, you know, the end of the glass here before it wraps around to your back of your vehicle. So all four of those lines all going in the same direction, and it even has these nice sort of gradual rounded scoops. It's not like a hard angle. So there's lots of curves, even though the Aerostar is very wedgy and angular. There's lots of little curves built into it. Another one of my favorite views of the profile is because you have all this momentum going towards the front, going forward, but there's lots of momentum coming backwards too. And one of my favorite parts is the way these headlight bezels just taper off at a perfect kind of 45-degree angle and make this little triangle here. I love that. You know, it could have wrapped around and been just like a boxy block, but they put in these, like, you know, angles in this these sort of like contrasting directions, and it just and now that I see this bezel here, it's very similar to the angle that's taken up here with your great little window line on your little triangle window here. Same swooping angle, and there's a lot of like sort of parallel lines running through the Aerostar, and as well as, of course, you have the AV problems. You have of course, the idea of parallel lines running together. Highlighted or accentuated by the two-tone in this case, but of course all your great little body creases here running all the way down. So there's lots of these, as I've said now, parallel lines, and it adds a continuity or consistency in motion and momentum, and I really, really like that. The other kind of funny line in here, because you have this perfect line going down the driver's side door And that kind of breaks the Aerostar into its two halves. Of course, the one shorter half that has a direction mostly going in one side, and the longer half which has its direction not as steeply going in the other side, and that balances itself out perfectly. The crease on the front of your door is very interesting, however, because it's one of the only lines that's not just a straight vertical line on the least body portion of the Aerostar. So that's kind of interesting to note. It's just like a slight little bend there, but it works quite well, I think. And it kind of just has a little bit of forward momentum to contrast this backwards momentum. And stunning, really. You know, just a impeccable piece of design, the Ford Aerostar. This one, you know, 163,000 is decent mileage, but you're going to get classic insurance on it. Maybe through Haggerty, who are trying to sort of pursue and seduce into maybe sponsoring some of these videos. They've actually done, you know, I keep tooting their horn, but they've done one of the only really good pieces of scholarship on the Aerostar. They wrote a great article about the Aerostar and how it kind of got lost under the, you know, the Dodge Caravan was such a big deal for Lee Iacocca and for Chrysler and for the minivan in general, and it came slightly before the Aerostar, but I would argue that the Aerostar was a much more diverse, or you know, there's a lot more things you could do. There's a lot more variety in the options you had, and versatility is the word that I'm looking for, than those vehicles. And then, of course, you have the Chevy Astro and sort of the trifecta of minivans from that period, or at least American minivans, that is very, very much like the Aerostar. In fact, people always call Aerostars Astros. They say Astro vans, even when they're talking to me, or sometimes they say Astro Stars, which is a hilarious combination of linguistical jumbles. And it's very funny because I have a good friend in Switzerland, and shout out to Schmitty, and people would always refer to Switzerland as Sweden. They say, oh, you're going to visit your friend in Sweden. And they would say, oh, you're going to drive your Astro van. And I said, well, you know, not quite. So that van was very similar to the Aerostar in that it had all-wheel drive and was sort of this combination or hybrid between a truck and a van and a car. But I think the Aerostar in the looks department has it beat. And, you know, you can argue the Astro van, quite honestly, seems to have a bigger following than the Aerostar. And I wonder why that is. And I think the Haggerty article kind of pins it down in a way, but by just saying the Aerostar was kind of lost. And it's kind of ironic because to me, they had kind of the splashiest ad campaign, and they had this real, I always say the Aerostar is so great because it's so aspirational. Like, it really aspired to be so great. And I think it pulled it off in spades. I mean, they sold over 2 million of them. So I think it is a success, but yet somehow it still lingers in the shadows, even within this market and then at large within the carscape generally. Obviously, we're trying to change that. And you know, I've encountered so many people now, and it's been so great, who really, really appreciate these Aerostars. And in fact, a lot of people I meet that own an Aerostar own multiple Aerostars. So serial ownership is always like a real true sign of a classic car, where they're so great that you can't just have one. You need to collect multiples. You see that with Porsches, Lamborghinis, Ferraris, and you see it with Aerostars. You know, just more thoughts on the greatness of the Aerostar. But certainly for $2,000 or less, this would be a very, very sweet pickup. Maybe get your bumpers, you know, fixed up a little bit. And other than that, a great cruiser if you are going to be camping or just want a lot of space with a vehicle, or you could use it as a work vehicle too. Certainly this is right on the borderline of something you'd want to like kind of preserve a little bit versus something you could just, you know, throw anything in. You know, even if the interior gets a little dirty, your exterior is still very nice and pristine. Looks like it's fairly rust-free. So just a gorgeous, gorgeous Aerostar. I love the year 93, and I really like this two-tone color scheme. Very striking. So there you have it. Thanks for watching. This has been Year of the Aerostar, and we'll see you for the next one. Janky do thanky.
One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.